My name is Vorrak-Siel, Senior Intelligence Analyst for the Galactic Council, and I am writing this report from what used to be my very comfortable office before the humans arrived. Let me be precise about something. When the Council first detected the human species, roughly 43 of their solar years ago, we were not afraid. We were, how do I phrase this diplomatically, entertained. Yes, entertained. Like watching a small, furless creature climb a very tall tree with absolutely no plan for getting back down. The initial survey teams described them as, quote, aggressively medium, not the largest species we had encountered, not the fastest, not the most intelligent according to raw cognitive metrics. They had no natural armor, no venom, no significant claws or biological weaponry of any kind. They were, by every scientific measurement we possessed, deeply unimpressive. So naturally, the Council assigned them a threat rating of Class 2, Nuisance level. The same category as the Trillback's cloud drifters, who are essentially large floating jellyfish that occasionally bump into ships and apologize. That was our first mistake. I remember the exact moment my superior High Analyst Krethian called me into his chamber. He had that specific look on his face, the look that means something has gone wrong. But he has not yet decided how wrong, so he is still maintaining professional composure by roughly 30%. He placed a data tablet in front of me. Warrick, he said, very calmly. Explain this. The tablet showed footage from a border skirmish near the Deltan Passage. A human vessel, one single vessel, had engaged a Krethian war fleet of 12 ships. Now, to be clear, the Krethians are a Class 7 species. They have been a military power in this sector for over 2,000 years. Their commander, Admiral Zurvak of the Iron Fang Fleet, had never lost a battle in 60 years of active service. I watched the footage, then I watched it again, then I sat down, because my legs felt suddenly unreliable. The human ship should not have survived the first 10 seconds of that engagement. The Krethians had superior firepower, superior numbers, superior shielding, and centuries of accumulated tactical doctrine. Everything about that confrontation pointed to one logical outcome. Instead, what actually happened was, the human captain, a woman with a name our translation matrix rendered as Petra Voss, did something no Krethian battle algorithm had ever been programmed to anticipate. She flew her ship directly into the debris field of a Krethian vessel she had already destroyed in the opening exchange, using the explosion and scattered hull fragments as cover. Not because she planned it according to recovered communications, but because it, and I am quoting her exact words here, seemed like it might work. Seemed like it might work. Let that phrase settle in your mind for a moment. In Krethian military culture, you do not attempt a maneuver unless the probability of success is above 80%. In human military culture, apparently, seems like it might work, clears the bar. Petra Voss then proceeded to use that debris field to create a false sensor signature, leading 4 Krethian destroyers to fire on each other in the resulting confusion. 2 more Krethian ships attempted to flank her and collided because they were both following the same doctrine-approved flanking protocol, which had apparently never anticipated that both ships would execute it simultaneously from opposite sides. Admiral Zurvak, 60 years of unbroken victory behind him, transmitted a personal message to the human vessel. He asked, in clear violation of all military communication protocols, "What are you doing?" Petra Voss replied, and again I am quoting exactly, "Honestly, Vorrak, figuring it out as we go." She did not know my name. That was a coincidence. It was still deeply unsettling. The remaining Krethian vessels retreated. Zurvak filed a formal incident report with the Council describing the engagement as, and I will never forget this phrasing, tactically incoherent but somehow effective. He requested a review of human threat classification. The Council bumped humans from Class 2 to Class 4. Which was, as I now understand with the painful clarity of hindsight, still extremely wrong, because here is what we did not yet understand about human military doctrine. We assumed they had won. You spent considerable resources trying to decode it. Our best analysts, scholars who had cracked the strategic philosophies of 47 different species, studied human military history for 2 years. Their final report was 1,100 pages long. The conclusion, on page 1,100, read as follows. We believe humans may not have a doctrine. We believe they have something worse. They have a habit of looking at a problem, deciding it cannot be solved by any reasonable means, and then solving it anyway out of spite. Out of spite. Council member Braxis, when presented with this report, laughed loudly for an uncomfortable amount of time, and then he said, "Send it back. Have them try again." The second report reached the same conclusion. And then, 3 weeks after that second report landed on my desk, humanity formally applied for a seat on the Galactic Council. The application included a polite but very specific note. It said, and I remember every word, "We have noticed that the Council has been categorizing human civilization as a Class 4 threat. We would like to discuss this categorization. We have scheduled the discussion for next Tuesday. We look forward to your response. Please note that we will be attending regardless of whether you respond." The chamber went silent. Corvith looked at me. I looked at Corvith. Somewhere in the building, a junior analyst laughed nervously and then immediately pretended he had not. We had until that moment never encountered a species that had simply scheduled a meeting with the Galactic Council without being invited. Tuesday was in 4 days. And somehow, none of us doubted they would show up. They showed up on Monday, 1 day early. I want you to understand something about the Galactic Council chamber. It has existed for over 6,000 years. Species have trembled walking through its doors. Empires have collapsed after leaving those halls. The architecture alone was specifically designed to communicate one singular message to anyone who entered. That message was, "You are small and we are not." The human delegation walked in, looked around, and one of them said, "Nice ceiling." That was Delegate Finn Okafor, former military commander, 30 years of service, 12 confirmed engagements, and apparently a man who evaluated ancient alien architecture the same way he might review a moderately interesting restaurant. There were 3 of them. Finn Okafor, a younger woman named Sable Drix who said nothing, and simply watched everything with the calm expression of someone mentally cataloging every exit in the room, and a third human, an older man named Colt Warrick, who smiled at every council member individually, like he already knew each of them personally, which was impossible, and yet somehow felt true. Council member Braxis, who as you may recall had laughed at the first human threat report, opened the session. "You were scheduled for tomorrow," he said. Finn Okafor nodded pleasantly. We were in the area. The Delton Passage, where the nearest human transit point existed, was 9 hours of travel from this station. Being in the area was a creative interpretation of spatial reality. Braxis let it go. I could see, from my observation post, that he was already recalibrating. Good. Braxis was smart enough to recognize when the ground had shifted under him. Some of the other council members were still smiling politely, which meant they had not yet noticed the ground moving. The session officially opened and Finn Okafor placed a single data chip on the table. "This," he said, "is a full record of every military engagement between human forces and other species over the past 40 years. Every one, including 3 that we are reasonably sure your intelligence services do not have on file yet." Silence. Sable Drix spoke for the first time. Her voice was very quiet, which somehow made it louder. "We are not here to threaten anyone. We want a seat at the table. We think that is fair. We also think the council should know exactly what it is inviting in, so there are no surprises later." Colt Warrick smiled again. I do not trust that smile. I have reviewed the footage 17 times since that day and I still do not trust that smile. Braxis reached for the data chip slowly. What happened next was that every council member in that chamber spent 40 minutes reviewing the content of that chip in complete silence. I was watching from the observation deck and I can tell you, with professional authority, that I have never seen 40 council members simultaneously develop the exact same expression. It was the expression of someone who has just discovered that the small animal they had been calling harmless has in fact been quietly building something in the corner of their habitat for several years. The chip contained what the humans called their tactical history. Other species called their equivalent documents military records or battle archives. Humans called it a tactical history, which is a small difference in language that turned out to mean something enormous. Because a military record documents what you did, a tactical history documents what you learned. Every single engagement on that chip included not just the outcome but an analysis. What worked, what failed, and then unexpectedly worked anyway for reasons that were documented with alarming scientific precision. The humans had been cataloging their own tactical patterns, their own failure modes, and then systematically eliminating the weaknesses. For 40 years, while we were classifying them as Class 4, Council member Veth, who represented the Shreth Confederation, a species with 800 years of unbroken military dominance, put down the data chip and said something in her native dialect that my translator rendered as a phrase roughly meaning we have made a significant error in our thinking. Finn Okafor had apparently also used a translator, because he looked at Veth and said very politely, "We prefer to think of it as a mutual misunderstanding." Veth stared at him. He smiled. Not the unsettling smile of Colt Warrick, a different kind. The kind that said, "I am being genuinely kind right now, and I need you to understand that this kindness is a choice I am actively making." The vote on Human Council membership took 11 minutes. It passed. Unanimously. Which for context has happened exactly 4 times in 6,000 years of Council history. Afterward, during the informal reception that followed major sessions, I found myself standing near Colt Warrick at the refreshment table. He was examining a Shrethi appetizer with the focused curiosity of a man who had eaten strange things before, and had made peace with the possibility of doing so again. I asked him, because I am an intelligence analyst, and I cannot stop myself, the question that had been bothering me since the session opened. "The 3 engagements," I said. "The ones you mentioned we did not have on file. You told us about them voluntarily. Why?" Colt Warrick picked up the appetizer, examined it once more and then ate it with complete confidence. He looked at me. "Because," he said, "the fastest way to make someone trust you is to hand them something they didn't know they were missing." He picked up another appetizer. And he added, still smiling, "Because we already knew you would find them eventually. This way we got to be the ones who told you first." He walked away. I stood at that refreshment table for a long time after that. 40 years, Class 2, Class 4, Nuisance level, floating jellyfish category. We had looked at humanity and seen a species that was aggressively medium. We had not considered, not once, the possibility that they knew exactly how they appeared to us and had been using that appearance as a strategy the entire time. I filed my updated threat assessment the following morning. I recommended Class 9. The Council approved Class 8 as a compromise. Finn Okafor, when informed of the new classification, reportedly said, "That seems about right," and went to find more of those appetizers. I believe he was being modest. I have never been more frightened of modesty in my entire professional life.